Hi, my name's Barney, and welcome to our session today on the University of Melbourne. In the next half an hour or so, I'm going to run through a little bit more about the university, the different programs and ways that you can study different areas at the university. We'll also look at how to apply, how our degrees are structured, and also touch on some accommodation and scholarship options at the end. Before we begin though, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm presenting from today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that to those students, those Indigenous students who might be tuned into today's session. This slide here is our welcome gate. So if you haven't been to our Parkville campus, this is one of the main welcome gates, and there's two words, welcome and Wominjeka. Wominjeka is welcome in the local Indigenous language, and it signifies the really important role that the local Indigenous peoples play at the university. Okay, so before we talk about the university, let's touch on Melbourne, the city. You might be sitting there having not really visited lately, or maybe not at all, and there's lots to love about being a student in Melbourne. Melbourne is consistently ranked as one of the world's most livable cities. It's a really student-friendly city, it's a safe city, and it's a very multicultural city, even in the world that we live in at the moment. I guess overall, it's a great place to be a young person and potentially to study. You might know about all the public transport opportunities in Melbourne. It's really easy to get around. Our Parkville campus, which is our main campus, is very easily accessible to the CBD via trams and trains. There's a lot of live music. It's a hub for music, arts and sports, cafes, restaurants, and it's close to things like beaches, skiing, and a lot of other adventures. So it's a great place to be a young person and to study and potentially join us at the University of Melbourne as well. Now, talking a little bit more about us as an institution, we're quite an old university. We've been around for over 165 years, and we form a really key part of the city itself. We're basically as old as Melbourne as we know it is at the moment. We're quite a large university, so we have almost 70,000 current students, and 50% of those students are doing a graduate program or a master's degree, and that can be quite different from some other institutions in Australia, and we'll talk a little bit about why that's the case. Like we touched on before, it's a very diverse city and a very diverse institution. We've got students from over 130 different countries that study with us, and they're learning from some incredible world-class academics, a lot of which you would have seen on the news in the last kind of 12 to 18 months, helping the world deal and helping Australia deal with some of the issues that we're currently facing. Now, if you haven't been to Melbourne before or you're not familiar with our campuses, this is a great overview of just exactly how close we are to the city. So you can see there that we've got Stop 1, which is our student services team, and they are at our Parkville campus predominantly. Parkville is a suburb of its own. It has its own postcode. We've got banks, food, sports fields, as well as residential colleges where a lot of our students live. It's a huge place, and that's where most of our students study. In the top left-hand corner there, you can see our South Bank campus. Now, South Bank, as it suggests, is on the South Bank of Melbourne, and it's right in the heart of Melbourne's art precinct, where the National Gallery of Victoria is, as well as a whole lot of theatres. So as you can probably guess, that's where you would study anything like acting, dance, drama, or music. Those topics are usually found at our South Bank campus. You can also see the Melbourne CBD there, and what's not shown, it's a fair way out of shot, as we have a variety of other campuses, more specialist teaching campuses situated all around Victoria. So depending on what you're studying, you might find yourself across a number of different campuses. However, South Bank and Parkville well and truly are our main campuses. Now, talking more about programs and actually study opportunities at Melbourne, this here is a nice simple overview of how you might move through the University of Melbourne into your career. So we've got that big circle there in the middle. That's our undergraduate degree. You might know this as a bachelor's degree, and those terms get used interchangeably. So you might come in, you'll do a 3-year undergraduate degree, and then you might move off to that top right-hand side there into your career. Or what a lot of our students have done, and currently 50% of our students are doing, is they're doing a graduate degree, otherwise known as a master's. So they've done their 3-year undergraduate degree, and then they've gone to the upper left way there to the graduate degree. And that might take them another 2 years, or it might take them another 4 years, depending on what they're studying, before they then move into their career. A lesser known path but a really great path for students who have a particular area of interest that they want to really, really dive into and potentially do further research in is actually a graduate research degree off to the bottom there. So if you're doing particularly in the science or the health fields, but really any of the fields, you've got the opportunity to spend a few more years doing further research. And who knows, you might actually potentially move into your career as a researcher. And in the last 12 to 18 months, particularly in the health and science fields, we've seen just how important those people can be to society. So that's kind of in a nutshell, a really simple takeaway on how you might move through the university. This next image, it kind of tells you the same thing. However, there's just a little bit more detail on there. So our big blue box on the left, they are our undergraduate or bachelor's degrees. At Melbourne, generally they take you 3 years, and we have our core degrees, which are arts, biomedicine, commerce, design, fine arts, music, and science. We also have 2 specialist degrees, and they are agriculture and oral health. Now, another quite a unique part of this study experience at the University of Melbourne is that concept of depth and breadth. And you can see that listed there under the different undergraduate degrees. So at Melbourne, 75% of the subjects that you study will be from your major or your core area in your bachelor's degree. So 3/4. 25% though is what we call breadth. These have to come from outside of your core discipline. What we mean by that, let's say as an example, you're doing a Bachelor of Arts and you're majoring in art history. 75% of your subjects will come from art history and arts areas. 25% though have to come from outside of arts altogether. So they might be science, or they might be some business, commerce, design type subjects. And that is what forms the breadth component. You get the opportunity to work with students from other areas that you might not have previously. And most importantly, it really gives you the opportunity to think about things in a different way. And it really makes you quite attractive to employers afterwards, knowing that not only have you got a depth of knowledge in an area, but you have a breadth of knowledge from different areas, and you are able to come at problems from different angles and think about things differently. As we mentioned in the previous slide, we've got our specialized graduate programs in the middle. They could be anywhere from 1, 2, 3, 4 years, depending on the program. And a lot of these have their professional masters, so they have accreditation attached to them. And there might be some professions where you actually need that accreditation to move into the workforce. So depending on what you're thinking about doing, that can really put you a step ahead of others out there. You might also see down the bottom there, we've got a green arrow that kind of comes back from your career into the graduate programs. And that's really just to highlight that in the world that we live in now, a study journey is no longer just a linear one. You might find yourself coming back to study after you've done your graduate program in 2 years, 5 years, or maybe even 10 to 15 years. It's that constant lifelong learning that we know now. Okay, so these are our undergraduate degrees. We've got our core bachelor's there, as I mentioned, and the specialist bachelor's degrees as well. We also have a pathway option, the diploma in general studies. So if you don't quite get the score that you were hoping for, the diploma in general studies might be an option for you to help you move into one of our bachelor's degrees. Now, you can see there, just because we don't have, 100 different undergraduate degrees doesn't mean that we don't cover a lot of different study areas. Within each of our bachelor's degrees, we've got majors. So majors could kind of be considered as the flavor of your arts degree, the flavor of your commerce degree. And it's really your field of specialization within the undergraduate's degree. Let's have a look at, for example, the Bachelor of Arts. There's 32 different majors that you complete in the Bachelor of Arts. And in this particular degree, you could actually complete a double major. So you could specialize in 2 of these areas and still only study for the 3 years. Now, double majors aren't available in every degree. So make sure that you check the website to find out which degree it is available through. But for this example, arts is one of those that you could study. So for arts, we're talking all things social science, language, history, psychology, philosophy can all be found within our Bachelor of Arts program. Our biomedicine degree is considered our undergraduate health degree. So if you are passionate about solving disease issues and working with the community about improving health outcomes, the Bachelor of Biomedicine might be your option. There's 15 majors here. You can't do a double major in the Bachelor of Biomedicine, so you will just focus on one of these areas. Our Bachelor of Commerce is all things business, marketing, design, marketing and finance, management, accounting and actuarial studies. You can do a double major here, so potentially you could pick two of these to specialize in, depending on which combination you're interested in completing. Our Bachelor of Design, we're not just talking things like graphic design, but things like architecture. There are some engineering type subjects, as well as property and digital technologies here as well. So website and app design are all contained within our Bachelor of Design. Our Fine Arts, our Bachelor of Fine Arts, are very specialized courses. If you're looking at becoming a professional practitioner within the acting field or moving into screenwriting, visual art, dance, the Bachelor of Fine Arts might be your preferred outcome. Now, these are all done often through the Victorian College of the Arts, which is now part of the University of Melbourne. And that also leads us to the Melbourne Conservatorium of Music, of which our Bachelor of Music is a part of. And there are 5 specializations currently through the Bachelor of Music. Now, I would encourage you, after you've viewed this session, to make sure that you jump onto our website to double check all of the different majors available, as sometimes these might change year to year, but generally speaking, what we've included today will be available. Finally, we have our Bachelor of Science. It's our biggest program, 42 different majors, and you can see that there's a lot of different areas that are covered. And I might at this point just explain that when you apply for our bachelor's degrees, generally speaking, you don't need to know which of these majors you'd like to complete. You simply apply for the Bachelor of Science. You don't have to highlight that you actually want to do food science or immunology. Once you come to the university, you've then got the opportunity to pick subjects from different areas before really settling on what it is you'd like to specialize in. Maybe after one semester, or maybe even into your second year, you might not actually finalize exactly what it is you'd like to major in. So if that list looks a little overwhelming, don't stress. There's plenty of opportunity to find your way through. In saying that, if you do know exactly from day one that you want to do data science, you want to do neuroscience, you can pick subjects from there and move along that pathway from the start. So it's really quite flexible, but also very specific if you know exactly what you want to do. Now, here we might also just look at a course plan. So this is how a student might structure their study. And this example is the Bachelor of Science, and the student is majoring in psychology. So you can see there that our degrees usually are split over 3 years. We have 2 semesters a year, and in each semester, generally you would complete 4 subjects. This student in those yellowy boxes, you can see the subjects they need to complete in order to do their psychology major. You can then see the purple subjects, which are their major subjects. So they're the final year subjects that really bring all of their psychology knowledge together. We've then got our green elective subjects. Now, elective subjects do come from the science degree, remember, so they're not psychology subjects, but they are within science. And then on the far right-hand side there, you can see the reddish subjects, and they are breadth subjects. They have to come from outside of science in this example. And you can see from the names of them, they've really picked some subjects probably from our arts area. So things like intercultural communication, self-culture, society, that kind of thing. And this is a great example of how a student might use their breadth subjects to really complement what they're studying in their major. Majoring in psychology in the Bachelor of Science, they're obviously going to be looking at the scientific side and how the brain works for psychology. But then being able to bring in some of those social science, social psychology areas, it's a great way to balance off and complement each other when they start looking into the workforce afterwards and start putting themselves forward for employment. So that's a great example of how you might utilize the breadth element of your degree. I'll also touch on here the specialist degrees. So our Bachelor of Agriculture has 3 majors you could complete, and they're listed there. We've also got our Bachelor of Oral Health, and they have a number of core subjects that you must complete as well. All right. Now, alongside that, we do also offer concurrent diplomas. So the way that a concurrent diploma works is that it allows you to get a qualification in one of these areas listed here. So computing, languages, mathematical sciences, or music, alongside your undergraduate bachelor's degree. So a great example here might be maybe you've studied a musical instrument the whole way through high school, and you're now kind of at the point where you need to decide, do I want to really study music? Or I've always had an interest in health and I really want to do biomedicine and move into the medical field. You might choose to do a Bachelor of Biomedicine, and you can then add the diploma in music alongside it so that you're still learning and training in your musical instrument at a university level. You don't need to apply for these when you apply for your course. They are something that you start thinking about once you've been accepted into the university. And they're a great option to increase your employability afterwards and maintain or learn about a new area at the same time. Languages, for that reason, also a very popular option that students might add a language to their science degree or to their commerce degree. And you can naturally see the benefits that that might provide for a student. Now, very quickly, these are some of our entry requirements. You should definitely check out our website, particularly if you're not from Victoria or if you're tuning in from overseas, as we have all of our different entry requirements listed on the website. What I really want to highlight here, though, is the prerequisite subjects. So each of our degrees do have a number of subjects you need to have completed in order to be eligible. For all of our degrees, you can see there we do need English, and there's a certain study score you must achieve in there. For some of them, you will need methods or specialist from a mathematical perspective, and others you will need a science. So double check the website, make sure you've done your research, and you will be able to tick these boxes before you apply. Otherwise, the VTAC system in which you apply won't consider you for the courses. Okay, so everything we've spoken about so far is really looking at an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's degree level. But there's obviously some big areas we haven't spoken about, and that's because they are actually taught at a graduate level or a master's level. And if you cast your mind back to one of those first slides we looked at, the way that you might move through the university, we've now, let's now assume that we've done our undergraduate degree and we're looking to move into one of these professional master's courses. Now, there are over 400 graduate or master's courses at the university. So there is a huge variety of options that you might look to take. For the purposes of this presentation, we're going to look at simply just 8 examples, and you'll see probably by the names of them, the reason why we've picked them as they're very popular areas. So the 4 that we have here, we have architecture pathways, dental surgery, engineering, and law. So if we actually start from the far right, if you wanted to study law and become a qualified lawyer at the University of Melbourne, you need to complete the Juris Doctor, which is our graduate law degree taught at the Melbourne Law School. In order to get into that, you need to have completed any other undergraduate degree. So you might do a Bachelor of Science, you might do a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Commerce. You then apply for the Juris Doctor and hopefully get accepted to do a further 3 years in that program to become a qualified lawyer. Now, I should point out as well that some of these graduate programs, well, all of them, will have their own entry requirements. So, for example, for the graduate degree, often there's an LSAT test, which tests your ability within the legal field, and they will also look at your GPA or your weighted marks from your undergraduate degree, and that's how they make the offers for these programs. For engineering, slightly more specific, you do need to do biomedicine, design, or science with an engineering major before you then apply for the Masters of Engineering afterwards for potentially 2 to 3 years, which program you do before moving into your career as a qualified engineer. A few other examples here. We've got medicine on the left-hand side there. So you complete an undergraduate degree, probably in science or biomedicine, but there are other options. You then apply for the Doctor of Medicine, and the Doctor of Medicine has a number of entry requirements, including the GAMSAT test, so the Graduate Medical School Entry Exam. We also conduct a series of interviews, so a multi-mini interview to see what your communication skills are like before becoming a doctor. And they will also look at how well you did in your undergraduate degree. Psychology pathways there, teaching, and veterinary medicine as well. So you kind of get the idea of how you might move into some of these professional qualification fields. But like I said, they are just 8 examples out of over 400 that we have. So please make sure you check the website if there's an area that we didn't quite touch on today, but you were hoping to find some more out about. Now, I mentioned that they each have their own entry requirements, and that means that you have to apply for them after your undergraduate degree. In saying that, we have recently begun packaging these into what we call graduate degree packages. So what this allows you to do is that for students who do particularly well with their ATARs, you are able to secure your spot in the master's degree or the graduate degree at the same time that you actually secure your spot in the undergraduate degree. You still study them after each other. You don't do them at the same time, but you do know that you've got that spot waiting for you in a couple of years because of how well you did with your ATAR. So as an example here, let's take engineering on the left-hand side there. So if you achieve an ATAR of 96, and this was for 2021 entry, so make sure you check what the ATARs will be in the next couple of months for next year. If you achieve a 96, you can apply for the graduate degree package in science and engineering, for example. And if you get that 96, you know that you go into your Bachelor of Science with a spot already waiting for you in the Masters of Engineering, provided that you still meet the entry requirements from a grade point average and that kind of thing. But you can go into your science degree knowing that your engineering pathway is secured and there is a spot there waiting for you. Now, you don't have to take that up if you choose to change your mind while doing science. Maybe you think you don't want to do engineering anymore. You don't have to take that up, but that spot is there in that course waiting for you. Now, you can see that graduate degree packages aren't available in all of our graduate courses, but there are a number that might be an option for you, particularly if you do quite well at high school. Okay, now speaking of applying, when you do apply to the University of Melbourne, we will also potentially look at what we call Access Melbourne. So Access Melbourne is for domestic students, and it's a special entry access scheme that is done through the VTAC system. Basically, these dot points on the screen here, if you qualify under any of these areas, we will take that into consideration when looking at your application to the university. So if you're from a disadvantaged financial background, a rural area, an underrepresented school, maybe you've just had difficult circumstances or you got sick during your senior schooling. If you feel that it had an effect on your outcome and your ATAR and your scores, you can put this forward for consideration for the university to consider. Now, specifically, if you are from a disadvantaged financial background or a rural or isolated area, or if you're an Indigenous Australian, the ATAR required for some of our courses does change if you qualify from those areas. Now, on screen here are the 2020 ATARs. Make sure that you check the website for the most recent Access Melbourne guaranteed entries. But like the heading suggests, it is a guaranteed. So in this example, a student from a disadvantaged financial background, if they got a 91, they know that they will get into biomedicine if they apply for it. They have a guaranteed entry through the Access Melbourne program, whereas other students might need to meet the 93 or the 94 to receive an offer. So make sure that you check to see what you might be eligible for. Because as shown in that example, it could be the difference between getting an offer or not. And you want to make sure that you're giving yourself the best chance you can to get in. From a scholarships perspective, we really put our scholarships into 4 major buckets that you can see here: academic excellence, access and equity, residential colleges, and overseas study. Academic excellence, as the name suggests, is really based on your scores and your entry scores that you use to get into the University of Melbourne. We have the Chancellor's Scholarship, which I'll touch on in a second. We also have the National Merit Scholarship. So if you're not from Victoria, but you're from Queensland or Western Australia, any other state outside of Victoria, you might be eligible for the National Merit Scholarship. And we also have a number of faculty-based scholarships. And what I would say about the Academic Excellence Scholarships is that for most of them, you will be automatically considered when you apply to the university. There won't generally be another application form that you need to fill out. Access and equity might be slightly different. There might be some scholarships here, particularly that top one there, the Hanson Scholarship Program, where you will need to do a separate application. With the Access Scholarships, the Access Melbourne program we spoke about in the last couple of slides, if you qualify under one of those areas, you potentially will be eligible for an Access Melbourne Equity Scholarship to help you cover the costs of not only coming to the university, but providing yourself with study resources and that kind of thing. We also have a large scholarship program through our residential colleges. So if you don't live in Metro Melbourne and you're thinking about moving to Melbourne to study, you might choose to live in a residential college. And we have some other accommodation options that we'll touch on shortly as well. But the residential colleges in particular have quite a large scholarship fund to help you cover some of the costs there as well. And finally, we do have some money available for students to actually go and study overseas once they're here at the university. And that can be up to $2,500 to help support that adventure. There's a lot of scholarships. That website down the bottom there brings up a full list that you can filter through to see if there's some that you might need to apply for or that you might be eligible for. And I always say that scholarship research time is time very well spent. So make sure that you sit down, even if it's just for half an hour or an hour, to go through the different scholarships you might be eligible for. Now, I said I'd touch on the Melbourne Chancellor's Scholarship. This is our top academic scholarship, arguably the top academic scholarship in the country as well. For domestic students, if you receive an ATAR of 99.9 and above, so those top academic achievers, you receive a HEC student contribution exemption. That basically means that you don't have to pay back the money that it costs to study your undergraduate degree. So your undergraduate degree is free from a tuition perspective. So that's a huge benefit. You also get a living allowance. So if you're from Victoria, you get $5,000 a year, and that's for you to spend on however you see fit. And we also have $10,000 per year for students who come from outside Victoria. And that obviously is to help you potentially travel back and forth and that kind of thing, or cover the costs of moving cities to study as well. You also get a Global Scholars Award to help you go and study overseas. And you also, almost most importantly, you have a guaranteed Commonwealth supported place in all of our master's degrees. So we spoke about our professional master's programs before. If you're a Chancellor's Scholar, you know that you've got a spot in all of those waiting for you, provided you still meet the entry requirements for those. So that can be a huge relief for students who do particularly well. There is an international version of the Chancellor's Scholarship, so I'd encourage you to check out the website for details about that. And you can also see a little condition down there for the Bachelor of Music. The ATAR is only slightly lower, 99.85, but you also need an A+ audition score for when you audition to receive that scholarship. Now, I said we'd touch on accommodation. There are a number of accommodation options at the university. We have university accommodation. So these are kind of like high-rise style buildings, fairly fresh and new buildings where you live with a whole lot of other students from the university. They're slightly different to residential colleges. So university accommodation is often a little bit cheaper than the colleges, and it's a little bit more independent. So you might not be, you won't have meals provided for you 3 times a day, and you might have to do some of your own chores and that kind of thing. So it might be the option for you. It's still a real student experience, though. You're living with students from the university. There's a huge social calendar attached, and particularly for students coming from interstate or regional Victoria, that would be a great opportunity to meet some people and help you settle in. The residential colleges, so we've got a number of residential colleges that you might choose to stay at. They can be a little bit more expensive than the university accommodation, but you do get 3 meals a day. You get a lot of academic support, and you are extremely close to campus as well. So depending on what you're thinking about when you potentially move to Melbourne, either of those might be an option for you. We also have more student apartments that are usually run through third-party providers. So there's lots of different buildings around the university that offer student accommodation. You might be able to do a homestay. Maybe you've got friends or family that live in Melbourne that will be able to put you up, and that's probably your cheapest and most convenient option. Or maybe you might look at sharing a house. Maybe there's a few of you moving from Adelaide or from wherever, and you might look to share a house with those and rent. Now, this is a quick overview of our different accommodation providers. So you can see there we've got in the kind of bluish greenish color up the top, numbers 1 to 5. They are the university accommodation providers that I mentioned. The orange colors, they are our residential colleges. So you can see that they're kind of around what we call College Crescent, which is that half circle shape at the top of the university. So very close to campus. And we've also got Student Village, which is one of those private student accommodation providers I spoke about as well. Now, really, whichever one of those you choose to live in, you are very close to campus and very close to Melbourne CBD and all that Melbourne has to offer. So it will really come down to what you think is the best option for you. And our website listed there has a lot of great information on what might be the best option for you and how to research that and figure out that process. Now, before we finish, how do you apply? So when you apply to the University of Melbourne, as a domestic student, you apply through VTAC. So VTAC this year opens in early August, and timely applications close at the end of September. Timely simply means the cheapest. If you apply after that, it will cost you a little bit more money through the VTAC system. You do have a few extra weeks to submit your Cs or your Special Entry Access Scheme information. That usually closes, as you can see there, on the 8th of October. You can then start planning and applying for accommodation options. Now, you can actually start doing that now if you like. It's a great time, and it's never too early to start looking at your different accommodation options and what life might look like in Melbourne in the future. You can then sit down and research and apply for some different scholarships like we spoke about before. And then offers are released through the VTAC system either in December or January. So December 2021 or January 2022. So stay tuned to the VTAC website for more information on exactly when those offers will be released. And there's a few links down the bottom there you might like to explore, particularly the VTAC website, to see those key dates and fees for next year. So that pretty much brings us to the end of today's session. I hope we've been able to explore a little bit more about Melbourne and you understand our offering a little bit more. Please do make sure that you get in touch if you have any questions. We're more than happy to help out, and hopefully we look forward to seeing you at Melbourne in the future. Thanks.